let's make a bowl of miso ramen from scratch right at home. It's really cheap and affordable to make, but unfortunately, it's gonna take a little bit of elbow grease, but I guarantee you, it is well worth it. So the foundation for every good ramen is a tasty broth. Now I personally try to keep all the bones from the meat that I use, and this pack right here, I've been keeping in the freezer, is a mixture of pork and chicken. Now there's a few ways to do this. You can just chuck it into a pot and start boiling it straight away for a few hours. That'll get you the broth that you need. But I'm personally gonna try to speed things up a little bit and use an Instant Pot. Now because it's frozen, it's gonna take much longer than usual for it to heat up and obviously cook in the pressure cooker. So I'm gonna throw this into the oven at the highest setting in order to quickly defrost it and give it a bit of browning. So it adds a little bit of extra flavor from the Maillard reaction. Now it's usually gonna take around 30 minutes. And while the bones are roasting, we'll just continue with our prep to make things a little bit more efficient. Now for the noodles, of course, we're gonna be a little extra and make it ourselves. A little trick with making ramen noodles is to include a little bit of alkalinity. In other words, baking soda. Now, baking soda helps create that bounciness and chew that you get from ramen noodles. You can take this a bit further and actually bake your baking soda. In that way, you can use a lot less of it, but ultimately the results are quite similar, to be honest. So, if you want to, you can bake your baking soda. All you have to do is lay it on a tray and bake it around 180 degrees for 10 to 15 minutes. But I, however, can't be arsed, so I'm just gonna use baking soda as it is. So to a mixing bowl, add in 2 cups of flour. Then into that, add in a teaspoon of baking soda and a teaspoon of salt. Give that a mix. Then slowly drizzle in some water. Do it a bit at a time, since the amount of water you'll need highly depends on how humid your environment is at the moment. So it'll never be the same, but it'll be roughly close every time you make it. Once it's formed into a shaggy dough kind of like this, start kneading. While you're working with the dough, feel free to add more flour if it's too wet, or add more water if it's too dry. It's very much a process of feeling it out rather than having perfect measurements. And after a while, you won't use measurements at all. Keep kneading until it's relatively smooth, roughly like this, for like 5 minutes. Then we can let it rest for roughly an hour before we turn it into noodles. Now you can either cover it with a wet damp cloth, cling wrap, or if you want to be a bit cheaper, just turn it upside down. Now I'm going to be adding 2 of them into the broth to enhance its flavor. Cut them into thicker chunks, like this. As for this one, I'm actually going to use as a topping afterwards. So I'm going to cut this into thinner pieces so we can cook up later. Transferring the radish into the Instant Pot so long. You can use carrots as well as the other root vegetable. Cut into big chunks, just like the radish. I like to add in 1 more aromatic, and that's a bit of ginger. Chunky slices, like that. 2 of them is more than enough. So you can see the bones are getting a bit of browning. Just gonna break it up a little bit with our tongs. Now the bones are nice and defrosted and a little bit caramelized. Throw everything in. To speed things up, I've already boiled a kettle of water. Fill it up just over that it covers the bones. Seal it, and we'll be cooking it on high pressure for 45 minutes. Then pass it through a strainer into a separate pot. You can still eat the radishes or the carrots from the broth, as well as the bit of meat that's left on the bones. But I'm gonna keep that for that day, so I just wanted you guys to know. Now to season the broth, there's a few ways to go about that. You can either use soy sauce, salt, or in this case, miso. Bring the broth to a simmer, then add your miso to a ladle, scoop a bit of the broth, and mix it in a ladle so it can combine. Once that's done, mix it into the broth. Give it a taste to see if it needs more. And if you're happy with the miso flavor, but you just want a little bit more salt, by all means you can just do so. Now I'm gonna do something a little bit different. I'm gonna add the radishes into the broth and give them a quick blanch. They don't need to be cooked for long, roughly 5 minutes is more than enough. Now for the other topping, I'll be using chicken breasts. We're gonna marinate them first with a bit of soy sauce, black vinegar, sugar, and garlic powder. Give that a little mix. then cover it with a lid and place it in the fridge and marinate roughly for an hour, or whenever the broth is ready. That's around the perfect time. Now to cook the chicken, heat up the pan on medium-high heat, add a bit of oil. When it's developed a crust, you can throw in the rest of the sauce. And cover with a lid until it's done. Remove it from the pan, and you're still left with this delicious glaze that you can add on to the noodles. Now for the noodles. And here are the strands of noodles. If I could hand pull them myself, I would, but that is extremely difficult to do, and this is so much easier. Strain the noodles. Let me just look at that. Oh, that's good. Wow. Perfectly springy noodles and the chicken. That fucking sauce slaps, dude. And of course, a bit of that daikon / radish. Oh, so much flavor. And there you guys have it. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe to see more videos just like this.